Hello everyone and welcome to yet another Ascension guide. Today I would like to discuss the fact if there's a best race for Ascension. Since there's no class, a lot of people are probably just aiming for the race that they find the most aesthetically pleasing or that they find the lore to be the most interesting one. And I'm here to discuss if for min-maxers there's a chance to go for a really optimal race. So there are a few things to consider. I mean, obviously there is no class, it's a classless realm. But there are still always certain traits you probably are aiming for, whether it be a tank, a healer, or magical DPS, physical DPS. I mean, there might be some hybrids, but for the most part such roles are needed in a role-playing game. And considering those circumstances, is it even possible to determine a best race? For that I will try to break it down into a few different categories. Basically the ones I mentioned already, like tank, healer, physical, magical DPS. Because otherwise it's really hard to determine an overall general kind of optimal racial ability. Maybe we can also answer the question if twinking will be viable in WoW Ascension since there's no class and you can just respec. A lot of people were asking me, or like speaking in general chat, that twinking might not even be needed. But I guess for min-maxers there's a valid option to really just go for twinks that fit your role style or your playing style. Basically races that fit the class you're going to emulate. And again, that's why we are here, that's what we are going to try to find out, and without further ado, let's just start right in with humans. Alright, the human spirit. Spirit increased by 3%. This is actually a pretty okay talent, nothing too crazy, but for healers very valuable. Like the spirit itself as an attribute is not really that good. But the thing in WoW Ascension is, since everyone can basically have at least one or two heal abilities, mana is a lot of times very valuable. And even if you are a DPS and you have at least a heal over time for your disposal, then having the ability to use that from time to time thanks to an increased mana regen can actually be pretty valuable. 3% isn't that much, so this is, I think, more on the weak side of talents, but a good talent nonetheless. Then we have sword specialization, two-handed and one-handed swords by 3, and expertise is pretty huge, especially in WoW Ascension. It's a 3.5 client but vanilla cap, so getting along expertise can be really hard, and sometimes you have to spend a lot of talent points, ability points in your talent trees to get there. And having this racial trait helps out a lot for physical DPS, so huge plus for this talent. Same thing for the mace specialization. I mean, pretty self-explanatory, just an overall great talent as well. Perception is pretty huge too. For PvP this is just an amazing talent. Again, it's a classless realm, pretty much everyone has at least some mechanic of stealth, and being able to see them thanks to this racial trait can be a huge advantage. Same thing for everyman for himself, also great for PvP. Gets you out of maybe some tricky situations, especially if you get ganked, and you will get ganked a lot in WoW Ascension regarding the server you're going on. Even if it's not free for all PvP, there will always be some sort of PvP going on, and for that aspect of the game, every man for himself is also pretty huge. And then we have also diplomacy, reputation gained by 10%. This is just great to get a head start, to get those extra reputation points for the first few months or weeks of the game, and just get ahead and get that recipe, get that key to dungeon. Diplomacy is just overall just a great talent as well. I will try to go through those different kinds of races, and in the end to give a conclusion about whether this race is a good option for that certain kind of class you are aiming for. So for now let's just move on and let's talk about a few things. And in the end I will try to say, okay, if you're going for a tank, then this race is probably your best choice. I guess it's better to talk about that in the end when we have some sort of overview over those different kinds of racial abilities. So for now let's move ahead to the next race. And that will be dwarves. So here we go with stone form. Great PvP talent no matter where you stand, no matter which kind of class you try to emulate. Poison, disease and bleed effects removed, and 10% armor is just great overall. Of course it's better for tanks, but great PvP talent even has some merits for PvE in certain situations. Fine treasure is okay, it's not the best racial, doesn't have anything to do with classless or class realms, and it rather depends on the profession you're going to pick. If it's going to be something like mining or herbalism, then probably shouldn't go for fine treasure. But other than that, it's an okay talent, but nothing too crazy. Gun specialization, very specific, but okay. 1% crit increase is pretty nice, but again, very specific. If you are not aiming for going to go for a ranged physical DPS build, then this is pretty much useless, and you should keep that in mind. Other than that, in Wrath of the Lich King there are actually a few nice guns which make it worth it, but I would argue that there are also a lot of really good late game bows, and it's vanilla standard still, so you are not really going to get into late game Wrath of the Lich King, which means that there's only like one gun in AQ for vanilla, and the rest is basically just bows. So yeah, not really a trait that makes 12s worth picking. Mace specialization is pretty great though, not only by 3 but by 5 increase. And again, expertise is really nice, so if you want some physical DPS, if you want to go for some sort of tanking build, then well, this could be a viable option. Frost resistance is okay, nice for next Ramas. Has some merits for PvE, I guess, but in a short conclusion, I'm not too thrilled with the dwarf racials, to be honest. Right now they seem inferior to the human ones. I guess for PvP, and if you're aiming to go for some sort of hunter build in this very niche scenario, then this could be a race for you to pick. Alright, moving on to Night Elves. This spirit, nothing much to say here, 70 per 5 increase while dead, which is nice. Nice movement speed increase, helps you especially if you get ganked a lot of times, and you will probably die a lot of times, especially on the open world PvP realms, but well, I guess it's okay, but nothing too crazy, to be honest. I guess if there's a scenario where you have a draw with another player and you basically kill each other, then you reach your corpse a little bit faster and might be able to pick up your loot and his loot by that. So for that case it could be nice. Shadow Meld can be okay, you probably won't use it that often since you probably will pick another better stealth ability, but it will make that stealth ability a bit better. And since it's Wrath of the Lich King, you can also use it in combat, so it's also a nice out of combat kind of ability, which then again makes it very valuable too. Quickness is great no matter what kind of path you will pick, maybe not as good for ranged or healers in PvE, but for PvP it's always great, and for tanks it's also a pretty amazing ability, to be honest. 2% in dodge for ranged and for melee attacks is great. I already talked about elusiveness when I talked about Shadow Meld, because this is basically the ability which allows you to have a higher increase in your stealth abilities and makes it harder for you to get detected. Nature resistance is okay for PvE, I guess, especially for AQ. Reduces the chance you will be hit by nature spells by 2%, so it's okay, but nothing too crazy, to be honest. Very situational. So yeah, that already concludes the Night Elf race. Pretty great if you are aiming for some roguelike or tank class, I guess. Other than that, some convenient spells and traits, but nothing too crazy. Alright, and here we go with the last class for the Alliance side, Gnomes. Starting out with Expansive Mind, intellect increased by 5%. This talent makes Gnomes probably your go-to class for anything healer / magical DPS related. Since you can allocate your stats freely in WoW Ascension, pumping a lot of stats into the intellect attribute gives this talent even more power. Keep in mind, it's not only mana, it's really intellect, which also means it increases your chance of a critical magical damage attack. And again, since physical damage dealers will also have some sort of hybrid abilities which will use mana, Expansive Mind is also great for them. Same thing with the Spirit from Humans, which also has its merits in that scenario. Having an increased mana pool thanks to the Expansive Mind is just great. Escape Artist is another one of those racial traits which is just great in any kind of scenario for PvP, no matter what kind of class you are aiming for. Escape all the effects for any immobilization or movement speed reduction effect. So again, there will be a lot of ganking, there will be a lot of PvP on those realms, and having an Escape Artist effect can save you a lot of trouble sometimes. Engineering specialization. Engineering increased by 15, great stuff to have. Engineering is pretty tedious to bring up, especially towards the end, and having those 15 points, it makes skilling so much easier. And then we have Arcane Resistance, which is pretty much bad. Like, there's almost no PvE encounter. There are a few, but also for PvP there won't be that much arcane damage, and well, overall not the best of abilities or not the best of traits to have, but I think the other ones are already kinda amazing. So yeah, this one kinda falls out and is really not that good. Alright, let's try to conclude all the information we just gathered into one sort of ranking and trying to digest everything we just talked about. Let's start with spellcaster / healing classes. I think if you want to go for something along those lines, Gnomes are definitely the race for you to pick. Again, with the current stat allocation system, expansive mind and the increased intelligence that comes from that is just a really solid talent to have. Increased engineering skill is convenient but no must have, but also like the escape artist for PvP is just amazing. For any physical melee or hybrid build I really can recommend you to go human. They have just an overall great arsenal of racial traits. PvE, PvP, the increased expertise with swords and maces is just great. You will find a lot of those weapons along your way, and also late game. Bonus reputation games is also amazing for the first few weeks, also late game. Some extra spirit never hurts, especially not in a server where you can use all of your resources, and having an increased mana regen will be pretty nice no matter what you play. And stealth detection increase and breaking out of trapping effects is just a really nice trait to have for any PvP encounters. I guess what makes humans so strong in this scenario is that they have an overall really nice and solid arsenal of racial traits. And since you are going hybrid in a lot of scenarios, this is just such a strong thing to have. In my opinion, dwarves are inferior to the human racial traits. I mean, they look cooler, but we are talking about min-maxing here, so I guess that's a bit out of the equation. Again, if you are going really niche into some sort of hunter build with gun weapons, then be my guest. And I mean, also Stoneform is great for PvP and also has some PvE merits. So if you have a mace, beefy, tanky hero class you are going to aim for, then dwarves might be a good choice as well. Other than that, I really have to recommend you to go for human. And I guess if you want to go for physical DPS, but you are more of the dagger instead of the mace or sword guy, then Night Elf is also a viable option. The increased movement speed, while that is very convenient, especially for the reasons I talked about earlier, they have a very high base agility, and of course if it's going to be something along the lines of a rogue/stealth class, then their racial traits also have some pretty nice merit to it. The dodge is nice for PvP and for tanking, but again for those roles I think the human traits are just a bit superior. So basically all races have their place if you are going to go for very niche kind of builds. Overall, again, I would argue that for spellcasting, healing, Gnome is probably your best choice. For anything else, human, and then if you are going to go for some sort of niche hybrid builds, then Night Elves and Dwarves will find their place. So in my opinion at least, yes, you can determine if there's a better/a worse race for a classless server, but not to the extent that it really would matter. For min-maxing, it might matter, and if you have a really clear idea about what kind of build you're aiming for, then yeah, there are indeed different approaches. But first and foremost, really just have fun. Don't really think about it too much. I guess that's something I can always recommend you to do. If you want, I will make a similar guide for the Horde side, so please let me know in the comments what you think of this, if you think it's rather a bit pointless to make, or if you found this to be helpful. But yeah, for now this will conclude the Alliance side of things, and if you have any questions then please also just ask me. I will try to help you out as best as I can. If you enjoyed this video, then a like would also be very much appreciated, it helps out a lot. But as always guys, thank you very much for watching, have a great evening and stay awesome. Bye.